Turns out the treasure was between the human's legs. Alien Mercenary has work to do. Broken cities lay under a gray sky, their towers snapped like old bones. Smoke drifted from fires that no one had bothered to put out. The war had ended weeks ago, and most scavengers had already taken what little value remained. Only fools or desperate hunters came here now. Veshk was neither a fool nor desperate. He was an alien mercenary, tall and armored, his skin a dull blue-gray beneath layered combat plating. He had survived wars on 12 different worlds. His name carried weight in the mercenary guilds. If Veshk accepted a contract, the target was caught or dead. No excuses. This contract, however, felt wrong from the start. One target, one human, alive. The payment was enough to retire forever. No explanation, no background. Just coordinates and a warning. Do not damage the asset. Veshk moved through the ruined streets with practiced ease, weapon low, sensors active. The silence bothered him more than gunfire ever did. His visor swept the area again and again, finally locking onto a faint heat signature ahead. A human, alone. The human limped through the rubble, one leg dragging slightly. His clothes were torn, stained with dirt and dried blood. No armor, no visible weapon. Just a tired man moving forward because stopping meant dying. Veshk frowned. This was the target worth a fortune. He stepped out from behind a shattered wall, raising his weapon. "Human," he said through the translator. "Stop moving. This will be easier if you comply." The human stopped. Slowly he turned around. He was younger than Veshk expected. His face was thin, eyes dark but alert. Pain was clear in the way he stood, but fear was not. Instead, the human looked curious. "Well," the human said, breathing hard, "you don't look like rescue." Veshk studied him carefully. No explosives, no hidden blades, no power armor. His scan swept lower and suddenly hesitated. Something was wrong. There was a dense energy reading near the human's lower body, shielded by biological tissue in a way Veshk had never seen before. The signal was compact, stable, and impossibly efficient. Veshk narrowed his eyes. "What are you carrying?" The human glanced down, then gave a small, tired smile. "Depends who's asking." Before Veshk could respond, alarm screamed in his visor. Multiple contacts, fast, hostile. Figures poured from the ruined buildings, alien raiders drawn by movement and heat. They fired without warning, plasma bolts tearing through stone and metal. Veshk reacted instantly, dragging the human behind cover as shots exploded around them. "Stay down," he snapped. "I was planning on it," the human replied. Veshk returned fire, precise and deadly. 2 raiders fell, but more kept coming. They moved recklessly, desperate and savage. The human groaned as he shifted position. His injured leg shook, but he forced himself upright. "If we stay here, we're dead." "You cannot run," Veshk said. "You are injured." The human met his gaze. "Then you'll have to keep up." Before Veshk could question him, the human pushed himself forward, limping into the open. Raiders turned toward him, firing wildly. Veshk swore and followed. They moved through the ruins, dodging fire. The human's breathing grew harsh, sweat pouring down his face. Every step clearly hurt him, yet something strange happened as he moved. The energy reading near his lower body began to rise, not spike, grow. With each painful step, the signal strengthened. Veshk noticed the human's movements change. His limp became less severe. His balance improved. His speed increased, not fast but steady, unstoppable. "How are you still moving?" Veshk demanded. The human didn't answer right away. They ducked into a collapsed transit tunnel, buying a moment of safety. The human leaned against the wall, chest heaving. "Because stopping isn't an option," he said finally. More raiders closed in. Veshk knew they couldn't hold the tunnel. He glanced at the human again, scanning the strange device embedded near his pelvis, fused with muscle and bone. "This technology," Veshk said slowly, "it is not external." The human nodded. "Emergency survival core, human-made." Veshk had heard rumors. Human battlefield adaptations. Desperate solutions created by soldiers who knew rescue might never come. He had not believed them. The raiders charged into the tunnel. The human straightened. "I'll draw them," the human said. "You will die," Veshk replied. "Maybe," the human said calmly, "but I won't stop." The energy reading surged as the human stepped forward, pain fueling motion, motion feeding the core. Veshk watched in disbelief as the human moved faster than before, striking a raider with raw force, using rubble and momentum rather than weapons. Veshk joined the fight, covering him. Together, they pushed through, leaving stunned or unconscious raiders behind. The human stumbled at the tunnel exit but did not fall. Veshk caught him. For a moment they stood there, smoke drifting around them. "You should not be alive," Veshk said quietly. The human laughed weakly. "Yeah, we hear that a lot." In the distance, heavier ships roared to life. This was no random hunt. Someone powerful wanted the human badly. Veshk looked at the exhausted man in his grip, then at the blinking contract icon in his visor. This job was not simple. And the treasure he was hunting was not something that could be locked in a crate. It walked forward, one painful step at a time. Veshk pulled the human into the shadow of a broken structure and checked the sky. Heavy craft, not raiders, military-grade engines. Whoever wanted this human had finally arrived. The human sat against the wall, breathing hard. His face was pale, and pain showed clearly now that the fighting had paused. Still, the strange energy reading near his lower body remained stable, humming softly under Veshk's sensors. "You are failing," Veshk said. "Your body should be shutting down." The human wiped sweat from his face. "Yeah, well, it hasn't learned to quit yet." Veshk scanned him again. The device was not just attached, it was integrated. Bone growth had formed around it. Muscle fibers responded directly to its output. This was not stolen technology. This was built for survival. "Why you?" Veshk asked. "Why place such a system inside a single soldier?" The human smiled weakly. "Because we don't always have armies." The ships grew louder. Veshk made a decision. "We move now." They slipped through the ruins, keeping low. The human steps were slow at first, but with each movement the energy core responded. His posture improved. His breathing steadied. Pain still existed, but it no longer controlled him. Veshk watched closely. The more the human moved, the stronger he became. They reached an old transport bridge half-collapsed over a deep industrial trench. Below, darkness swallowed anything that fell. Above, enemy drones swept the area with blue scanning beams. Veshk paused. "Crossing is dangerous." The human looked at the broken bridge. "So is staying." As they crossed, a drone spotted them. Sirens echoed. Energy bolts struck the bridge, shattering metal and stone. The human ran, not fast but steady. Each step landed with more force than the last. The core glowed faintly beneath his skin, unseen to the eye but clear to Veshk's visor. A blast hit nearby. The human stumbled. Veshk reached for him, but the human caught himself. "No," the human said through clenched teeth. "I'm still moving." He pushed forward, dragging his injured leg across the final stretch. They leapt to safety as the bridge collapsed behind them, falling into darkness. They didn't stop running until the city noise faded into silence. Inside a ruined factory, they rested. Veshk sealed the doors while the human collapsed onto the floor. "You are destroying yourself," Veshk said. The human lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. "That's tomorrow's problem." Veshk crouched beside him. "Explain." The human hesitated, then spoke. "The core was designed for lost soldiers. If rescue fails, it keeps us moving, turns pain into power, motion into strength." "And when it stops?" Veshk asked. The human turned his head. "It means I'm dead." Veshk felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. His visor flashed. Incoming transmission. The employer. A masked figure appeared, voice calm and cold. "Mercenary Veshk, you have delayed delivery." "The area is compromised," Veshk replied. "You will proceed. The asset must remain alive." Veshk glanced at the human who watched silently. "What is the asset worth to you?" The figure paused. "Enough to change the balance of the galaxy." The transmission ended. Veshk stood slowly. "You are not a person to them," he said. "You are a resource." The human laughed softly. "Yeah, figures." Heavy footsteps echoed outside. "Soldiers organized, not raiders." Veshk checked his weapon. "We will not survive a direct fight." The human pushed himself up. His legs shook, but he stood. "Then we don't fight directly." They moved through maintenance tunnels, avoiding patrols. The human began taking the lead, reading broken signs, choosing paths with instinct born from chaos. Veshk noticed something else. The human never complained. Every step hurt. Every movement cost him. Yet when they passed the remains of civilians, families who never escaped, the human slowed, checking for survivors. "There is no time," Veshk warned. "There's always time," the human replied quietly. At one point they found a wounded alien child trapped under debris. The human stopped immediately. Veshk stared at him. "You will be captured." The human lifted the rubble anyway. The core surged, feeding strength into his damaged body. He freed the child and handed it to Veshk. "Get it out," the human said. Veshk obeyed without thinking. They escaped again, barely. Later, hiding beneath the factory ruins, Veshk finally understood. This was why the core worked. It was not just motion, it was choice. The human chose to move for others, not just himself. Enemy troops closed in again. This time there was no escape route. The human looked at Veshk. "When they come, run." "You will die," Veshk said. "Maybe," the human answered, "but I'll buy time." The human stepped into the open, drawing fire. The core flared brighter than ever, fueled by pain, determination, and refusal. Veshk watched him stand alone against impossible odds, and something broke inside the mercenary. Veshk turned his weapon, not at the human, but toward the incoming troops. For the first time in his long career, Veshk chose a side, and it was not the one paying him. The first shot Veshk fired was not part of the contract. It cut through the lead soldier's armor, dropping him before he could react. The rest of the troops froze for a fraction of a second, surprised that the mercenary they had paid now stood against them. That moment was all the human needed. He moved. Pain tore through his leg as he stepped forward, but the core answered. Energy surged through muscle and bone, steady and controlled. The human did not run. He advanced, each step strong, unyielding. Enemy fire filled the air. Veshk shifted position, laying down precise shots, forcing the troops to spread out. "Do not stop," he shouted to the human. "I wasn't planning to," the human replied. The factory ruins shook as heavy weapons struck walls and machinery. Sparks rained down. Smoke filled the air. Through it all, the human kept moving, drawing attention, absorbing the danger so Veshk could strike. They fell back together, deeper into the ruins, sealing blast doors behind them. For a brief moment there was silence. The human leaned against a wall, chest rising and falling fast. His hands shook now. The core still glowed faintly under Veshk's scanners, but the output was unstable. "You are pushing it too far," Veshk said. The human smiled, tired but calm. "That's what it's for." Veshk did not answer. He was busy fighting something inside himself. Every law of survival he had followed said this was foolish. Contracts kept mercenaries alive. Breaking them got you hunted. Yet when he looked at the human, he saw something no employer had ever shown him: purpose. They moved again, slipping through narrow passages. Enemy forces surrounded the area, cutting off exits one by one. Drones hovered overhead, scanning relentlessly. A new transmission came through. The employer appeared again, their voice colder now. "Veshk, your betrayal has been noted." "I chose differently," Veshk said. "You chose extinction," the figure replied. "Stand down, deliver the asset, you may still walk away." Veshk glanced at the human. The human shook his head slowly. "No," Veshk said, "I will not." The transmission ended. Moments later, the air changed. A deep hum filled the ruins. A heavy unit was deploying. The The human recognized the sound. "That's a suppression walker," he said. "City class." Veshk's eyes narrowed. "We cannot defeat that." The walker crashed through the outer wall, towering over the ruins. Its weapons powered up, targeting both of them. The human stepped forward again. Veshk grabbed his arm. "If you go out there, you will not return." The human met his gaze. "Then make it count." The core surged violently as the human moved into the open. Every sensor screamed warnings. The system was overloaded, feeding everything it had into his body. The walker fired. The human did not dodge. He planted his feet. The blast struck, throwing him back, but he stayed upright. The ground cracked beneath him. The core absorbed energy, redirected force, and pushed it back into his muscles. The walker hesitated. Veshk had never seen anything like it. The human advanced again, slower now, but unstoppable. He reached a fallen support beam and lifted it with raw effort, using it as a lever to jam the walker's joint. Veshk provided cover, firing at exposed systems, shouting commands without realizing it. "Left side, now," the human obeyed, moving on instinct and trust. The walker faltered, then the core screamed. The human collapsed to one knee. The energy reading spiked dangerously. Veshk ran to him. "The system is failing," the human gasped for breath. "It's not failing, it's finishing." He looked past Veshk toward a cluster of civilians trapped behind debris nearby. The walker's weapons were retargeting. "I can shut it down," the human said, "but I need time." "You will die," Veshk said again. The human smiled softly. "Then help me live a little longer." Veshk turned and faced the walker, emptying his weapon into its sensors, drawing fire. He felt fear, but he did not run. Behind him, the human focused, forcing the core into a controlled release, redirecting energy through damaged circuits, overriding safety limits. The ground shook. The walker powered down, crashing into the ruins. Silence followed. The human fell forward. Veshk caught him before he hit the ground. The core dimmed, its light fading. "You did it," Veshk said quietly. The human's eyes fluttered. "No, we did." Enemy forces began to retreat. Without the walker, the operation had failed. Rescue ships appeared on the horizon, human design. Veshk watched them land. For the first time in his life, he felt relief instead of regret. As medics rushed toward them, Veshk looked down at the human he had been hired to deliver. The treasure was not a device. It was the human will to stand, even when the body begged to fall. And the galaxy would never fully understand how dangerous that truly was. The rescue ships landed with a soft hum, their engines powering down. The human had been placed on a stretcher, wrapped in medical blankets. Veshk stood nearby, his weapon lowered, his stance a quiet contrast to the chaos of the ruined city. The human's eyes were closed, and his breathing was shallow. The medics worked quickly, but Veshk could see the strain on their faces. The core was still active, though its energy was fading. The human had pushed it too far. Veshk stepped closer, watching the medics inject a series of stabilizing agents into the human's body. The core's power source was draining, and soon, without it, the human would no longer be able to move. "We're losing him," one of the medics said, his voice tight with concern. "Do you have a better option?" Veshk asked coldly. The medic glanced at him. "If we had a full medical bay, maybe, but we don't." Veshk's mind raced. The employer's threat still echoed in his ears. "You chose extinction." But the human had shown him something far more valuable than any contract, something that made every risk worth it. He could not let this end like this. Veshk turned to the medic. "There must be something, a way to stabilize him." The medic shook his head, helpless. "We've done everything we can." Veshk hesitated, then looked down at the human. The stubborn, exhausted face that had refused to give up. The body that had fought for every step, even when the core was pushing it to its limit. For the first time, Veshk made a choice. "Isolate the core," Veshk said. "Transfer the power to a backup system. It's not finished." "I've seen this before." The medic's eyes widened. "You know about the core?" Veshk nodded. I have studied human technology. The medic blinked, then turned to his team. They worked quickly, adapting the medical equipment to handle the human's unique physiology. Veshk watched them, but his mind was on the core, the glowing power source that had kept the human alive long enough to finish what was needed. As the team worked, Veshk took a step back. He didn't want to be here. He had taken jobs where he could simply complete a task and walk away. No attachments, no complications, no choices like this. But now he couldn't walk away. The medics finished their work. The core's energy was now transferred into a temporary power converter. The human's body had been stabilized, but the core was barely functional. It had pushed the human to the brink, and now it was empty. The medic turned to Veshk. "He'll survive, for now." Veshk nodded. "Good." The human stirred slightly, his eyes flickering open. He looked around, confused, then locked eyes with Veshk. "You're alive," Veshk said. The human smiled weakly. "Yeah, guess I am." Veshk couldn't hide the small smile that tugged at the corner of his mouth. He was used to dealing with soldiers, mercenaries, criminals. But this human, this soldier, had something none of them had: resilience, a spirit that could never be broken no matter the odds. "You've won," Veshk said. "The battle's over." The human let out a weak laugh. "Not over, just paused." Veshk raised an eyebrow. "You still have more to fight for." The human's eyes softened. "We always have more to fight for. That's the thing about humanity. We don't stop. Not until everyone's safe. Not until the job is done." Veshk thought about it for a moment. He had never understood that kind of thinking before. For the first time, he found himself wondering what it would be like to have something worth fighting for that much. The medics began preparing to transport the human back to the ships. Veshk stood, watching the teamwork. Before they could leave, the human reached out weakly, grabbing Veshk's arm. "Hey, Veshk." Veshk turned, raising an eyebrow. "I never asked you," the human said, his voice hoarse. "Why'd you help me?" Veshk paused. The question was simple, but it didn't have a simple answer. He couldn't explain it, not in a way the human would understand. "I choose who I protect," Veshk said finally, "and you are worth protecting." The human's smile grew a little stronger. "That's more than anyone's ever said to me." Veshk didn't know how to respond. But he didn't need to. The words had been said, and they were enough. The human was loaded onto the rescue ship, and Veshk followed. He wasn't sure what came next, but for the first time in his life, he didn't need to know. There was a sense of purpose in the air, something that felt real. As the ship ascended, leaving the destroyed city behind, Veshk sat by the window, watching the ruins fade away. The job was finished. The contract was over. But there was something more, something that Veshk couldn't shake. He had helped a human survive against all odds, and that survival meant more than any payment could ever offer. He had learned that humans weren't just stubborn, they were relentless. When the world tried to break them, they got up and kept going. When they had nothing left, they fought for what mattered most. And that, Veshk realized, was the true treasure. As the rescue ship flew into the blackness of space, the human's eyes fluttered closed once more. But this time, he was no longer fighting alone. Veshk, the mercenary, now knew what it meant to fight for someone else, and he was ready for whatever came next.